chocolate strawberry shortcake. This is one of my favorite raw desserts. Well, at least until the next one comes along. So grab yourself a whole lot of beautiful fresh strawberries. If strawberries aren't in season, then don't feel pressed to go and make it from that. You could use pear and raspberries. There's lots of ways to adapt this recipe. The first thing we need to do though is get this magical ingredients. It looks like a block of butter. It's actually cacao butter. It smells divine. I love getting little bits of this, rubbing it on your arms, and then you smell like a chocolate. If you made a body butter of half of this, say like 50 grams of this and 50 grams of coconut oil, melted it up, mixed it together, put it in the fridge till it's solid, then you can give your beloved a lovely massage. Anyway, for now I need 60 grams. So I'm going to melt it. So I've got some hot water in here, and then I've got my little glass jug. The smaller you cut it, obviously the quicker it's going to melt because you've increased the surface area that the heat can get to. A little bit of science in there. So 60 grams is not too much. It's easier to measure. What I would do actually, I'd recommend to weigh it on scales about 60 grams and then put it in there. But it's easier to measure it once it's melted because it's going to be more accurate. Smells divine. Like that's just, it smells like you've walked into a chocolate shop. Just yum. But strangely enough, if you eat it, notice I'm not eating it, I'm just wanting to rub it on my body. The reason why I'm not wanting to eat it is because it doesn't taste like how it smells. It smells like chocolate. It just kind of tastes like a fat. It just tastes like oil because it doesn't have the sugar and the cream which normally makes a delicious white chocolate. I'm just going to put this to the side while it melts, while we make the base. The base is quite decadent. So it's made of macadamia nuts and almonds. And I've called this strawberry shortcake because shortcake is a really buttery type of pastry, like a biscuit. And what the shortening is, in traditional terms, would be butter, but I'm using coconut butter. So we're going to have 1 cup of macadamia nuts and 3/4 of a cup of almonds. Yes, that would be better if they were soaked. But for this recipe, I don't want the base to be too moist, so, you know, the chef part of me rules out over the nutritionist part of me, so I want it to be a dry, crumbly mix. 1 cup of macadamia nuts. Of course, everything's raw, unsalted. Don't try and make this with roasted macadamia nuts that have been salted. I've heard people tell me, they're like, oh, mine tasted salty, like I needed a beer with it. No, you didn't do it right. Okay. So there's our macadamia nuts. And then I'm just going to blend that up until it's like breadcrumbs. There's still a few little chunks in there, but it's not on its final blend yet. The other thing I need to do is sweeten it before I add the fat. The sweetener I'm using is xylitol. There are a variety of sweeteners, natural ones, and I'll talk more about sugar in another episode, but I've chosen this for its properties. I wanted dry and crumbly. So just 1/4 cup of that. And then I'll check on the cacao butter, which is melting away there. And that's going to be mixed. But anyway, while I'm waiting for that to melt, I might as well prepare my strawberries. Okay, so I'll put this away. So delicious. Even if you're like, not going to make this recipe, which you absolutely must, this is the perfect celebration cake, go out and buy yourself some cacao butter and just, I don't know, revel in it. After a shower, put it on your body. Okay. So the strawberries are going on the top. I'm using 2 punnets, which is approximately 500 grams. They've already been washed, and I'm cutting off the stems, and I'll just reserve them. Now, many of these raw desserts can be made ahead of time and then frozen. This one can be, but I would recommend not putting the strawberries on until you're going to serve it. But you'll see how I assemble it later on. The reason why I don't want you to freeze the strawberries is because the strawberries have such high water content. I don't know if you've ever had a frozen strawberry, but it's like chewing on an ice block. It's not like a raspberry. If you had a frozen raspberry, it's hollow in the centre. You can stick your tongue in there and it's going to dissolve and warm and be defrosted in no time. So I'll just quickly chop all these up, waiting for that cacao butter to melt. So this is like a cheesecake in consistency and I think flavour, but of course it's dairy-free, it's grain-free, sugar-free, and basically anyone can eat it. And this is, if I was trying to introduce raw foods to somebody, this would probably be the gateway drug. Okay, this is what I'd offer to get you interested, to pique your interest. Notice my strawberries aren't super perfect. This is real food. This is what I really eat. I don't buy the strawberries when they're $6 a punnet. I buy them when they are, on special, economical. They're good. Have you noticed? Strawberries don't taste like they used to. So if you ever buy those massive strawberries and they've got lots of bits coming off them, they say that they've been injected with a drug called colchicine to elicit the mutation called polyploidy. They're big, they're impressive looking, but they're tasteless. Avoid them. If you could get small, homegrown garden kind, extra sweet. Make sure the cacao butter is fully melted. You don't want to just chop it up and throw it in because we're using the cacao butter to bind it. It's the fat solid that's going to stick it all together. So that's pretty much done. You might ask, why aren't I putting it in the microwave? Because it's not raw. Sure, go ahead and put it in the microwave. But you're paying good money for a pure ingredients, so you might as well reap the benefits of that. Okay, we're done. So that's going in here. Actually, I might pour that in while it's blending. Tidy up here. A little bit of residue in there, so I could put it on again or mix it by hand or maybe a bit of both. I think scraping down the sides is fine. So you'll know it's good to go because it's kind of holding together. Now, the interesting thing about macadamia nuts is that they have their own fat content, so the longer you blend them, the oilier they're going to become as you release the natural oils. A little scrape down. Get out of the corners and blend again. So we're going to press this into a flan pan. What is a flan pan? Well, It's one that has a fluted edge. I've got this one with a nice, easy, removable base. Don't go out and buy this. Use whatever you have. You could use a springform cake pan. You could make it square. There's no hard and fast rules. I'm doing it this because it looks pretty. I'm just going to line it with some baking paper. Yes, I did pull off too much then. But we'll just make do with that. It's like tucking in a sheet. I know, no one tucks in sheets anymore. All right, so this is going to be pressed into there. Careful of the blades. Smells great. Now we're just going to press that into the tin. And actually, this is one of the times where I like to add another piece of baking paper, and I'm just going to get a big flat spoon and smooth that out. A big white flat spoon. The more you practice yoga, the more enlightened you become, and you can just sort of think things, imagine things into existence. You could see that when I was smoothing that, it was sticking to the spoon, and I didn't want to be frustrated doing that, so easy, cheap way. Okay, let's spread it all out. Okay, I'm just showing you what's happening underneath there. Okay, big chunks there, empty there. Let's spread the mix this way. Now, I always feel like I'm on a rush or on some kind of schedule. You don't need to be like that. I think sometimes I even practice yoga like that. It's like, quick, let's do this one, let's do the next pose. So if anyone's holding the pose too long, that's my challenge. Okay, now what I'd like to do is to get it up into the edges. If this was regular short crust pastry made out of butter and flour, you'd roll it out with a rolling pin, you'd put it on top, you'd get your knife and you'd go and you'd have a beautiful smooth edge. It's not like that. So we need to use our fingers to gently coax and mould our pastry base or our nut crust base. Did I say based? I meant base. Now, that's fine. You could deal with it like that, but I actually want to make it perfect. This one's going to be my son's birthday cake. Not that he's going to scrutinise it. See, I'm using the thumb to create that lip, that like flat edge. do. And then this is going in the fridge, or the freezer actually. That will hasten the setting process while I make the middle. So I want it to be firm. And that cacao butter, it's still warm in there. This is warm to the touch. So once the cacao butter solidifies, this is going to be a nice hard crust that you can pick up, and it's going to hold its shape as a nice firm piece of pie. Now we're going to make this gorgeous gooey chocolate filling. We've got raw cashews, but I've just learnt that raw cashews are never actually completely raw. Yes, they might not be roasted, but apparently all cashews are originally steamed to remove their poisonous shell. Who knew? Anyway, so these have been soaked overnight. I'm just going to blend them until they're broken apart. Then I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of coconut oil, maybe scrape down the sides. Keep blending. Here's a tip. If you put the coconut oil in first, before the rice malt syrup, see how it just slides clean out? Easier. If you put the cacao powder in first and did it in the other order, it's just going to be a little bit more of a mess. So I'd like to actually just let that run for maybe a minute or so bear with me. Well, it's already looking gooey and creamy inside. I'm going to add the cacao powder. So this is raw cacao, means it's not roasted, has a higher level of antioxidants. And on the ORAC scale, so this is a scale that measures antioxidants, it's like off the roof. Like say blueberries and raspberries have a value of 95. Raw cacao is meant to be up there with like 220. Don't quote me on those numbers, but you can go and have a little bit of research and find out more about that. Vanilla, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Always washing my hands. I think that's one of the drawbacks of digging my hands into the mix. So 1 teaspoon of this. Oh, I can't go past vanilla without smelling it. And not all vanilla is created equal. So be mindful of which one you're choosing. Don't choose an imitation vanilla essence. That's not good. Some are preserved in an alcohol solution. Some are preserved with sugar. So just be mindful of which one you're choosing. I think I use both. Now, this looks and smells like a chocolate cake. And yes, in my time, I've eaten lots of chocolate cake. I've made lots of the naughty kind. This doesn't have any flour in it, doesn't have any sugar, doesn't have any eggs, but it is still nutrient dense. You're going to have a little slice of this pie and feel satisfied, not wanting to eat the whole cake. If you're anything like me, that's how I am with naughty desserts. I can feel a finger licking coming on. All right, I might just give it one more whip around the block. contrast of sweet with salt is just divine. Salted chocolate, who doesn't love that? It's become so mainstream that even Lindt does a salted dark chocolate. That's it, done. Just going to pour that on the base. The filling's ready, the base is chilling. I'm just going to chop my strawberries in half. So I mentioned that I was making this for my son's birthday, and I was asked, is this his favourite dessert? And I'm like, well, that's my favourite. So it'll be his favourite. And he's a pretty healthy kid, and no, he hasn't been brought up with McDonald's. And I think that's interesting. When he was younger, we drove past a McDonald's sign, the Golden Arches, and his cousin said, oh, look, McDonald's. And my son, this is a proud parenting moment, he started singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. So that's my little boast story. He didn't know what McDonald's was as a brand or as anything, even as a trip. I think he was about 3. Yes, we live in the real world. He's since had McDonald's. But I'm guilty of, I think we've been to Hungry Jack's or something, which is like Burger King. Can I say this? And said to him, you know, take note of how you feel when you're eating this stuff. And somehow he came out of that experience saying, oh, I've got heartburn. Maybe he ate the food too quickly. I'm like, see, it's because you eat that bad food. It's not going to make you feel good. Am I brainwashing my son? Yes, I hope so. Great. Okay, we're just going to pour that on there. Better? Good for my brain anyway. It's gooey, it's rich, it's chocolatey, it's everything you need a dessert to be. And it's guilt-free. Now, what I mean by that, people are like, oh, guilt-free, this and that. It's like sometimes you eat something that you know is bad for you, and that's fine if you enjoy it. But what I don't like is afterwards when you go, I shouldn't have had that. I wish I didn't eat that. And that's the guilt. That's the food guilt. Nobody needs that. So if you are going to have something that you think you shouldn't be having, make sure you choose the best of it. If you're going to have, I don't know, a wheat, egg, whatever, piece of cake, make sure it's the best piece of cake that you can find. Don't just grab something from the local supermarket. Unless their cake's really good. But with this kind of thing, hopefully you won't ever need to have one of those supposedly guilt-inducing cakes. Okay, I'll just whiz that around to get the last bit off. And then the blades are clean. See? So I've poured that gooey, chocolatey filling in there, and it will go hard, but I want to take advantage of the fact that it's quite viscous and soft now to decorate it by pressing in my strawberries. See how they can submerge? That's going to lift the actual volume up a little bit, but I love how they're embedded in there. Now you could be really fancy and make sure that you've got all the same size strawberries around the outside and maybe the smaller ones as you go around. I happen to have chosen a punnet or 2 punnets of strawberries. Look, they're quite equally sized, so I'm fortunate. What we're smelling now is the smell of warm chocolate and strawberries. And I don't think there's too many happier smells than that. Yes, I love food. Might go this way. Coming to the final round. And this is the kind of dessert, actually, that the more strawberries, the more fruit that you can press in, the better it is. So I think in my book there's like a perfectly arranged picture of the strawberries, but because we're really going to eat this tonight, I'm going to not waste a single one of these, hopefully. Whew. See how the level's risen as I push it up, and but when it sets in the fridge, that's going to be firm. And just, it will hold as a beautiful whole slice. Okay, I think, oh, that one's too big for there. He needs to go in my mouth. That's it. Back in the fridge. Uh-oh, there's a blemish. Gone. Back in the fridge or freezer to set until tonight for dinner. The chocolate strawberry shortcake is done. I'm going to remove this. Sometimes I need to balance it on a glass, but I think it might come out. Oh, it's coming out beautifully. Oh, except for that bit. Right? Life in all its imperfections has little mishaps. Doesn't matter. No point crying over split shortcake. See, perfect. Roll with the punches. Okay. Let's cut a slice. Oh, can you see that? The strawberry's getting juicy. Actually, because it's so rich, you probably wouldn't serve a slice this big. This is pretty generous, a little thin sliver. That's why I love. People say, is it expensive to eat this way? Well, you eat less. So it probably works out cheaper. There it is. Chocolate strawberry shortcake, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, raw vegan and delicious.